Welcome to a TagAlong discussion. One of the seminars that's taught by AlMaghrib Institute is on the Tafsir of Surah Yusuf. So one of the things that we wanted to do was explore the various thematic elements that are in Surah Yusuf at different communities with different people from the community itself. So one of the things that Surah Yusuf has is the idea of Yusuf alayhi salam, the Prophet Joseph, entering into prison unjustly. But while he spends his time there, there's a number of things that transpire that we can learn a lot from. Now, I want to introduce our guests here. We have Sheikh Daniel Hernandez. He is actually a registered prison chaplain, and he has spent time, giving and teaching to the inmates within our American prison system. Also, Sheikh Ehteshamul has also had experience meeting with juveniles within the prison system as well, and both have amazing stories. But the thing that I want us to talk about, and one of the things I'm going to tell you guys, I know we were joking about this earlier, is telling these guys don't move, and then I'm going to tell them to relax. So I'm going to tell these guys to relax now. One of the thoughts that was, what would you say, from your experience, is your top one or two challenges that exist for Muslim inmates within the prison system?
The top challenge is the lack of proper qualified volunteers or chaplains that can mentor and help develop the Muslim inmates and prepare them also for the re-entry to society if they're coming out of society, or help them develop into productive Muslims within the system if they're not going to come out to society.
So, I mean, one of the things, isn't that a challenge for just people coming out of prison in general, or is not just Muslims?
It is a challenge for people in general. You're right. It is a challenge for people in general. Talking within the Muslim community, the reason why we focus on it is that the growth of the Muslim community, of the Muslims within the prison system, is the highest.
Okay.
Also, according to statistics, the demand and the need for volunteer is also the highest. And also, attention is given to the Muslim inmates in regards of contemporary issues that take place, one being extremism, etc. So due to those three factors, that's why it is extremely important to pay attention to this need of proper qualified volunteers and mentors that can help the Muslim inmates to develop.
Gotcha. Now, I know it'd be interesting also to hear from your perspective. I know you mentioned going to the Juvenile Detention Center. Outside of that, have you been to some of the prisons?
I was in contact with prisons supplying them volunteers, but personally speaking, I couldn't go because I was needed in the Masjid.
Okay.
So I was needed always in the Masjid, so I couldn't go there. But we did have officers coming in, giving us, training, and also getting the volunteers sign up the papers, and also educating them what to expect and what they are supposed to, do and take care of when they go to the facility to provide the services. And yes, it is not like, as I got the feedback from people, that since it is an institution that is totally different than the mosque or church or something like holy. So when you go there, you do go through with, even speakers are going through with certain things that they are not even imagining if they are not thinking it seriously. So
you mentioned earlier is like going through the airport, but
Yeah.
is it about similar to it, or was it more intense, or is it harder to go through the airport?
Might be close or might be even harder because in airport you do get your stuff back immediately after.
Okay, makes sense.
But
Yeah.
there you have to leave it in in that place, and then after you are done with the program, you come out and then you can check your text messages and other things. So
First time you walked into a prison as a chaplain, as a chaplain's role, what was the change of perspective, or rather, what were your expectations going in, and then what was the change in, and were those the expectations that were met, or did you find something different? or because I mean, for most people that are watching, probably have never even set foot inside a prison. I would assume.
Well, personally, when I went into the prison system as a chaplain, voluntarily, not because I had to go to the prison before Islam, but when I went to the prison system voluntarily, I was impressed by the organization of the inmates in organizing, having, the prayer rugs ready, and, everything was really organized. The books available. They had someone in charge of organizing, coordinating the khutbahs, and sometimes due to necessity, because not having, just because there was a need of somebody to take the lead, and those things took place. I was really impressed by that, by the organization of the inmates and the ability of these individuals who might be considered in society as disorganized, as dangerous, for them to be organized and civilized and kind when we entered. And honestly, the response that they gave is one of appreciation. They were so grateful to have volunteers come and take their time from their families, from their professions, to go and spend time with them. So I think it was an amazing experience for me.
Gotcha. And how about you?
I mean, when I went there, yes, since it was the first experience for me, and especially for the sheikh who went with me, so certain things were unexpected. And then when we were in the middle of the program, I realized lots of things, and that wasn't like any difficult part. I would say that if you really want to provide some service to those who are stuck there, and you're sincere in your job, then things are not that difficult. Things are okay, and sometimes it might be better than the outside prison. Yeah.
What about now? I would assume maybe there might be some people, and maybe out of ignorance, they might say something along the lines of, "Hey, they're prisoners. What does it matter? Why do we have to invest our time and energy towards that? They committed crime. Now they're doing their time." What would you say to that?
I think, yes, we focus a lot of times on the majority, but there have been individuals who actually came out of the prison system with their degrees and established their own businesses, and they made use of the time within the prison system. So I think looking at them as individuals and not just looking at them for the actions that they committed. I think it is easy to judge an individual, but it is more difficult, and it takes longer to get to know the individual and the individual's circumstances and what led them to whatever actions they committed. I think that will be just in a sense of judging these individuals after getting to know them. But I think it is unjust to judge them based on the actions that they committed. And as human beings, we all make mistakes.
My understanding that what I get from the religious, guidelines and teachings, that those guys are not permanent criminals. So they can change. Yes, they made a mistake. They end up being in jail, but they can come out clean and better person. And in that process, can I offer them some flowers from Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? Especially when they are asking for it, they are saying that I want to be a Muslim. I want to learn about Islam. I want to learn about the way of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I take it as an opportunity and also as a responsibility that those folks, they are asking for flowers from Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to go out and reach to each individual around him, find the opportunities to reach out to the people. And how come that people are asking us now, and they're requesting us, and then we are unable to, or in many places, like we are unable to provide them that service. So I take it like that way, and I see that there is a opportunity for us to be part of their change when they are deciding to change themselves, and we must invest in that change. And today's criminal can be tomorrow's better person. Today's person who is stuck over there can be tomorrow's leader in the society, and we want our investment in that leader.
I would like to, because I mean, the words of Sheikh Ehtesham made me reflect a little bit. And being in this location, the Pearland Islamic Center, and being the Imam of this location, made me reflect on the day that I spent in prison, and it wasn't voluntarily. When I was reflecting, and I thought that based on the human being, the human judge might just condemn me for life and not forgive me, even though I might regret the fact of the crime that I committed. But when I realized the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his ability to forgive, it gave me hope, right? It gave me hope. So I was in the prison cell, and I was thinking of my freedom, thinking of my refrigerator, the night snacks, thinking of the freedom, the simple things, the freedom to wake up at whatever time I wanted, the freedom to take a bath, when in the prison system you have to take a 5-minute shower, and it's public shower. So when I thought about those things and the opportunity of change, coming into Islam, learning about Allah's forgiveness made me really have hope. And I think that every human being has the opportunity, to find light sometimes in these dark places, like, for example, Malcolm X and many others, and how many thousands have accepted Islam after they have read his story. And I'm actually one of them that read his story and also saw the opportunity for change. So I just reflected myself, for the benefit of all.
It's interesting. You mentioned, going into a dark place. Just reflecting on Surah Yusuf, one of the contrasts that they share is that there are two moments in his story, two major turning points where Yusuf goes into a dark place, but the way that he comes out in the beginning, in the first half, and the way he comes out in the second half is very different. In the first half, he goes into his brother stick him in a ditch or a well or whatever you want to call it, and he comes out and gets kidnapped and sold into slavery. Whereas in the second time, he goes into prison, a dark place, but he comes out later as the Minister of Finance. And just a reflection from the from the surah itself. But one of the things that I just and you probably remember, one of the Masjid in New Jersey, which I spent some time around, was in Teaneck, right? And I didn't understand his name until my dad kind of pointed out, and the Masjid's name was Dar al-Islah. Yeah, and it's just like the understanding I'm thinking is like not looking at prisons as prisons, and this comes from what you mentioned, is like they're looking at these institutions as
transition,
as places of transition, not detainment centers, but correctional facilities. But even the term correctional facility has a very negative association. But to look at it as a place of Islah,
right? Absolutely.
And for anyone who ends up
Reformation.
Reformation. The idea of somebody going in there, if one were tested with that, having that kind of mindset.
Yes.
And even what you were mentioning about Ibn Taymiyyah. When he went, what was it? It's like if you're on one side of the wall is the rahmah of Allah, and the other side
is the punishment.
Right.
The punishment of Allah in Surah Al-Hadid.
ظاهره من قبله العذاب باطنه
في رحمة وظاهره من قبله العذاب.
Now, do you find that the Muslim prisoners that you have spoken with, have they kind of adopted that kind of mindset, or is that something that you find that, okay, this is something that they would benefit from because they don't know, or like I'm just wondering what the mindset.
I think that realistically speaking, like in any congregation or community, let's call it a congregation, is that you have individuals who join for their own motives.
Okay.
Some might join for the self-interest. Their intention is, some might need protection. Some might need, so in the midst of the work as a volunteer chaplain, you have to kind of get to know them and see who's who. Okay. Right. Okay. So you have individuals who are sincere, who want to learn, who want to do different continue the Islamic education. Yeah. And we have actually the Islamic Online University was working on developing this educational system for the prison system. Okay. So to provide that, but it hasn't been effectively in the U.S. yet, but it's still in the process. So that's
Now, how far along are we in terms of like one of the things that you did mention that, and I was surprised when you mentioned they have libraries, and they have like fully stocked libraries of books and options. The challenge becomes is how does a person who doesn't even know the language navigate all of those different books because of
No, alhamdulillah, these books are actually majority of them in English.
Okay.
So majority of them are in English, and alhamdulillah, they have been dedicated volunteers. Like I was blessed with working with a volunteer who has been a volunteer for more than 20 years.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
So you were kind of like his protege.
I was following his footsteps. This is what he did. He would show me, how to get around, even how to deal with the system.
Okay.
Like Sheikh Ehtesham was mentioning about the challenges of sometimes some individuals in the system that do not want to deal with Muslims.
Okay.
So he would help me navigate and get me in the system. And sometimes, for example, I will go to that prison, to volunteer, and they will say, "Oh, your name is not on the list." But it was confirmed that it was on the list. So those kind of hardships, sometimes for the volunteer who's volunteering his time, who's taking the day off from work, some might just say, "You know what, I'm not going to waste my time." But at the same time, you have to realize that this is part of the struggle. You sticking to it will benefit an individual inside. And I think that we shouldn't give up. We shouldn't give up. And we should look into, in our locality, what are the opportunities available, and find out who is doing the work and how do I get involved.
Right. One of the interesting things is like the U.S. has, I think, the largest incarcerated population, I think, as a nation than the rest of the world compared to any other nation. Thus, you have a huge community of people. But I guess the question that comes up, like I know you've dealt in Texas as well as, I don't know, what was the other community? Belmont or?
Beaumont.
Beaumont.
It's also in Texas. It's off the border, close to Louisiana.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, but what about for like, okay, now I know you mentioned the website, was it tdcj.us.gov. Something?
I didn't memorize it. I just searched it, right? Okay. Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
Gotcha. Okay. But what about for folks that if they want to consider volunteering for something like this in other states?
That's what I recommend, to look into the systems and the programs that those states have. So I think
for Texas it's tdcj.state.tx.us. It's gonna show up very.
There's like a lens.
It's gonna get blurred, but I'll put it out the. You'll see it right here. So just as a marker.
So I think for us responsibly to take some time to do some research, to look into, if you're in some states you have Muslim organizations that are doing the chaplaincy work,
right, and
they're very well organized, but that's not the case in every state. And I think we should consider our locality and also try to branch out. I mean, we used to go to drive an hour just to go to a prison, just to spend 10-15 minutes, but at least to be present, and that's something that we should do our homework and look into it and know that there is a need. There is a need for volunteers. In some places, there is a need for literature.
No.
In some places, there is a need for someone to come and do the khutbah or to train someone to do the khutbah. And there's individuals out there that have the willingness to learn, but they don't have someone to coach them.
Yeah. The role of a volunteer is to educate the Muslims, provide some sort of guidance and development, encouragement for them. But the role of a chaplain, is the role of a chaplain to counsel, for da'wah, for education, all of the above?
I think it is a holistic approach. So it's not only the educational approach. And the role even of a volunteer chaplain is to be present, to get to know the inmates, but in a way that you also have some restrictions. You can't get into their personal matters. You can't find out about their case. Okay. Right? So there's things that...
So spiritual needs, more or less.
Spiritual needs, facilitating. If the volunteer is there, for example, in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, is that the volunteer's presence will allow the prisoners to have their program. So sometimes we had programs 3 times a week. and because of the lack of volunteers, they limit it to only Jummah.
Okay.
Right? So they limit it. So no ta'lim, no lessons, only Jummah prayer and for a particular hour. So when a volunteer is present, even just as a human being, a volunteer from the outside, the prisoners will get
so the more people participate, the more resources will be allocated to it. It's not the other way around. It's not like there's here the resources come. Like, no, let's see if the people are coming, then we'll make space. Is that what this? Okay.
Yes, and also another thing that I think a point to take home is that we should also work with the leadership and the imams and the people of knowledge and bring it to their table so that they could come up with a plan, a program, a systematic program that the volunteers can take and work off.
Absolutely.
You know, so that you can work on building instead of just going randomly and every volunteer teaches their own thing and
he developed his own lesson plans.
And then he refused the other volunteer and refused the other volunteer. And then you have
standardization.
And then the prisoners will say, you know what, please don't come. Right? Please don't come. You're confusing us. On our own is better.
So basically, I guess the final takeaway is for anybody who wants to get in on this and wants to serve these people, wants to see their rights fulfilled and so on, for them to essentially speak with the leaders in their community, see if these opportunities are available, as well as just go on Google, right? Search for Muslim. What are they search for? Muslim prison chaplain volunteer, or would that be appropriate? Or
no, I think just looking into regular volunteer chaplaincy services. You don't have to specific.
Gotcha.
Because
so prison chaplaincy volunteers.
Yes.
Okay. Or prison volunteer chaplain, something like that. Yeah.
Because even if there's only one inmate, then it is their right to get the services.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
All right, folks. Well, that's pretty much it. Again, I want to thank our two guests here. We
thank you very much.
Abdullah Hernandez of Pearland Islamic Center, as well as Sheikh Ehteshamul of Masjid Bakr, outside around Houston. So again, I want to thank our guests for showing up. And again, if you guys, again, this is part of applying what we know, right? So we see this example. Although Prophet Yusuf was forced to go to prison, but we don't have to be forced to be thrown into prison in order to be able to fulfill these rights and give them, educate them, provide the spiritual services that they need. Let's step up and be leaders in this area.
Absolutely.
So again, if you see any of us, for those of you from Houston watching, if you see any of us, don't be shy. Say hi.
Wa alaikum assalam.